The two scenes you're about to see are makeup on, or what we called makeup on, which is where Tobey Maguire applies the makeup to Joan Allen, and makeup off, which is where Jeff Daniels removes the makeup. We've chosen to sort of dissect these two scenes both because they're at the heart of what the story is about, and they're also technically the most challenging scenes for us to create.
Honey, where are you?
Here, give me your cheek. Here, give me the other. There. It's good. Lift your chin.
Is it working?
Yes. Here, give me.
What? Does it look okay?
Now here's the same scene again, but this time it's in black and white. And what's crucial to see here is that the green makeup that you saw earlier is actually matches the same gray value of Joan's skin, so that it's transparent between where the makeup is and where her skin tone is.
It's good. Lift your chin.
Is it working?
Yes. Here, give me.
What?
We went through a number of different scenarios trying to match Joan Allen's skin tone exactly. The reason we just didn't use black and white, some black and white paste or something, is again I wouldn't have been able to follow that line. I really needed something that we could find. And so Sue took some pigment and actually mixed it up in that. We did a lot of testing with that just to make sure that would work.
Well, and also her trying to get it to actually look like makeup.
Right.
And to have the right reflection and light
right,
value.
Right, exactly. It couldn't be wet or shiny or anything like that.
Or too dry. It had to look
Right.
actually like makeup.
Right. At this point, we don't know Joan Allen is in color, and as she's turned around at the sink, it's a very important part of the movie. It's she's all of a sudden in color. She's not comfortable with it, but of course it's part of her that, as we find out, she really isn't in control of. It's a part of who she actually is. So it's a very emotional point. When she turns around, it has to be very subtle. It has to be a gradual thing because there can't be any giveaway. So as she turned around, we actually ramped her color up from black and white, and as she turned, she came up in color. At that point, just as an aside, so she wouldn't look like a floating head in all this black and white world, I took her hair and basically created it. Instead of using the original color, we just used CGI hair and put color to the black and white, a very, very small amount. Also created her lips. Her makeup was very bright at that point. 1950s red that Sue Cabral did was great. In a color environment, in a black and white environment, we found that you just focus too much. So we kind of dropped that down a little bit. What we're going to see right now then is makeup off. It's the other end of the scene where we know Joan is in black and white makeup. She has a little bit of color in her hair and a little bit of color in her eyes, but not enough so it's going to be distracting. As she comes in, Jeff Daniels is of course painting a painting, and if you notice, that painting was originally in black and white, and we colored that painting. It was a storyline that he wasn't able to get the color right, but it was deemed to be inappropriate, so we basically colored the painting for him, which is good. We just kind of created that. During the makeup off, Joan Allen literally wipes her eye. When the way we did that, she was in her regular makeup, and we put the old green makeup on her white gloves because she has to cover her hands. And as you'll see, she actually wipes it on. That was easy for us to do because we just created the black and white. Again, took that shape and created a flesh tone. Obviously, because it's now green, so we just digitally created a flesh tone. As she goes along, you'll see that when she turns around, we had to do something else. We had her fully in green makeup, which was a bit alarming at the time to Joan and everyone else, but it's a testimony to her as an actress. She did a great job, and also Jeff. But the reason we did that was when we've reversed it, now she's wiped it, you see the pink, and he starts taking it off. It's kind of the same thing as when Tobey was putting it on, but in this case we're creating, instead of black and white, we're creating the flesh tone. And as he's wiping that off, we can follow that shape.
Now here again is the scene completely in black and white, and what's really important here to look at again is that the green makeup appears seamless, and there's no difference in grayscale value between the color of Joan's skin and the color of the green makeup.
Wait!
No, I've got to go.
Let me see.
I think as you can see from watching these two scenes is that color in this movie is really a character in it as much as Joan Allen or Bill Macy are characters in the movie. And one of the things that I think was such a tribute to Gary as a director is that he worked for a year on this movie, all through pre-production, all through production, and through a substantial part of editing without his main character. And that was he basically had to keep the idea of what the color was going to look like in his head, in how he imagined it, and we all kind of had to follow and help him create that until the point in time that it actually was done so he could see it. And I think that really...
Right, that was a main concern of his from the beginning, and he always had a very clear vision of how he wanted his movie to look. Doing what I do, have a tendency to really like a lot of color, and this was a great exercise for me to follow a dialogue that was very subtle, and it was a lot of fun, because making these colors work in this environment and making people that are in color interact with black and white people without taking you out of the movie. I mean, there were a variety of ways we did that. Some of which were, if there's, for instance, a color person, Joan Allen, when she's about to leave Bill Macy for the evening, she's sitting at the table. It's a black and white environment, and her reflections are all in color. When she walks in front of the shiny appliances, all her reflections are in color. And although it's subliminal, you may not even see it. We spend a lot of time and energy because it really anchors them there. In the same scene, when she's talking to Bill Macy, we found that sometimes Bill would kind of sink into the background because, of course, he's all black and white. She's in the foreground in this bright blue dress. And so we put a little bit of sepia in him just to visually bring him out a little bit. Again, it's not something you would really notice, but it gives a depth. It gives an aliveness to it.
I think the other sort of big challenge to this movie, or what you don't notice in watching the movie, is that there were 1,700 digital effect shots in the movie, which is an unheard of number. And when Pleasantville came out, it actually had the highest number of visual effect shots of any movie that had been made. And really, any shot that was in black and white became a digital shot that we had to create and scan into a computer, manipulate to actually make it look like real black and white film, because when you take color film and you just remove the color, it tends to look flat and muddy. And so we had to manipulate it and increase the contrast and make it look like real black and white, and then record it back out to film. And it was a really unprecedented operation. And one of the things that happened on this movie that I think ultimately was a great learning experience and for all of us is that we ended up setting up our own visual effects facility to do the work ourselves. We found, for a number of reasons, that if we bid it out, it would become too expensive to do sort of in the traditional Hollywood method. And so we found really the only way to get the movie finished was to set up our facility, and we went out and one of the funny thing is we worked for several months trying to figure out a way that we could afford to do it. And we didn't really crack the problem until we figured out it was cheaper to purchase the computers than it was to rent them. And once Chris figured out that we should, basically buy the machines and then sell them, we were able to do that. And we set up a facility, and we had, 20 computers and
10 computers, but off and on up to 20 people, working at it.
And I think that the other thing that I think sort of puts this all in perspective is the movie basically took up 7,000 gigabytes of information. The system that we built at any given time could handle, I believe, around 700 gigabytes. And one of the things, all of us are filmmakers, that we kind of learned on this project is one of the biggest challenges was actually moving that much digital information off of the storage medium, which happened to be digital tape, into our system, and then off again and putting it back on. And that really was quite a challenge, because we could only have 10% of the movie on the system at any given point in time. Right,
so when something was approved, we do entire sequences, and then they were approved. After we'd finish something, after the animators would finish a scene and we'd approve it, it would go to film, and we kind of would put it away. And we found a little later on, when we put everything together, there were some scenes that we still wanted to tweak a little bit. Usually the new ones. There is a scene that I would still change a little bit. But at any rate, we would take it at this point to, we went to CFC and put the whole entire scene. We basically took over their facility and put whole scenes up at the same time, so we could look at them in a linear motion and make a little bit of saturation tweak or contrast tweak or what have you, because we had done them shot to shot, and then we put it all together.
Lighting for black and white is very different than lighting for color photography, because color photography elements are separate. In color photography, elements are separated by their colors, and in black and white photography, they're separated by their tones of gray. So you may wind up with a guy in a pale blue shirt against the pale yellow wall, and there might be a pale brown cabinet on that wall. And in color, all those elements would be totally separate, and in black and white, they would all blend together and just be the same gray value. So in black and white photography, you have to really separate those values with the lighting, and in color, it just happens by itself. So that was a complicated thing to deal with in this movie, especially in scenes where black and white and color characters inhabited the same spaces at different times. In other words, two people in a room, and one person might stand in a spot and then leave it, and that was a black and white character, and then a color character might go into that same spot during the scene, and those two characters would require very different lighting, even though they were using the same space. So what we did was we hooked up every light on every set to a dimmer board, and we had a dimmer board operator who had a video monitor with a video output from the camera that I was using, and we would work out lighting cues so that he could adjust from basically what was hard light to soft light as people moved in and out of the same areas. Hard light being the way you light the black and white material, and soft light, in this case, being the way I lit the color material. And I have to think of a scene. I guess, the courtroom was a case of that. Actually, a better one is the soda shop, where when Tobey goes into the soda shop and the kids have started to read books and he's just telling them for the first time what it's like in the outside world, that's a scene where there are a lot of black and white and a lot of color characters in a very small space. And in that scene, as well as in the scene after the book burning, when after the soda shop has been wrecked, when they're all barricaded in there again, there's a lot of color characters and some black and white characters. And in those scenes, the lighting had to deal with the differences that those two elements required. And you'll see that, especially in the scene in the soda shop when they've barricaded themselves in after it's been destroyed, there's some very hard light in there on the black and white characters and some fairly soft light on the color characters. Okay, one of the most crucial technical achievements of the film that's completely overlooked is the lab work and the answer printing, because the tolerances that the lab uses for answer printing a color movie are fairly broad, and you can tell when you go to the movies, sometimes they switch a reel in the middle of a scene, and a room that had a yellow wall now suddenly has a light green wall or something, and your eye quickly adjusts to those differences. But in this film, the slightest change in color would have polluted the black and white. So it had to be the answer printing had to be very carefully controlled, much more carefully than it ever is for any other release. And first of all, to find a lab that was interested in taking that challenge was difficult, and then to find a lab that wanted the challenge and could overcome the obstacles, was even more difficult. In other words, if you had a black and white scene with a character who's blowing a bubble out of bubble gum that's light pink, well, if that scene came up, let's say, too pink in the answer print, you couldn't just say, okay, we'll take out some magenta, because then you would turn the bubble gum green, and obviously you have to keep the bubble gum pink. So that was a real challenge, and the way the answer prints were done, they had to be separate. They were controlled more by chemistry than they were by printer lights. Normally, when you do an answer print on a movie, you adjust the printer lights and you can adjust the colors. But in this movie, the printer lights had to be set for absolutely pure black and white, and then the only way to adjust the color was through the chemistry. And in the end, what happened was we would print reels, and the reels, once they came off the printing machine, would be red, and we would see where they fell within the tolerances that had been established for the print itself. And if something was slightly yellow, then that went into the slightly yellow pile. And if the next reel was slightly green, it went into the slightly green pile. And those piles accumulated enough like similar reels so that you could assemble an entire print out of those, and you would end up with one that was slightly yellow or a print that was slightly green. But the important thing was that it was fairly consistent overall.
You want to explain what this is?
These are the bound original storyboards that Gary gave to me as a present at the end of the movie. He since it was the first movie he directed, he wanted to make sure that he storyboarded every shot in the movie. And as you can see, this is quite a thick book, and it's one of two of them. So we spent some weeks, if not a couple of months, going through the script and coming up with shots and having them drawn by an artist named Len Morganti. And these are all those storyboards. This is sort of a memory of a good time on a good movie. This is the bowling sequence. This actually follows pretty closely too, I think. This is the shot where the camera and the bowling ball are on a little dolly together, and we dollied behind the bowling ball up to J.T. Walsh. This is a shot I really like in the movie of J.T. up against the bowling scoreboard. That's a nice, I always really like that storyboard. This is one of the town meetings where people are upset because somebody's back door is turned to color. That's actually one of my favorite shots in the movie. Is a shot of Joan Allen when Jeff Daniels is cleaning off the window of the soda shop, and he looks out the window and he sees Joan Allen across the street standing under a street light. I like that shot. Here's a great frame we shot this and it ended up not in the movie. And I always love that frame. This was Len's idea, just to have those busts with no faces on them. Just want to find this book burning stuff because it's really well drawn. It's interesting that this says 20% armbands in the crowd. At one point, the kids who wrecked the soda shop wear armbands with the Pleasantville logo on them. You can see those in there. And after the movie was screened, they decided to get rid of the armbands. You can see there's one there. So all the armbands were digitally removed. Here we go. I'm getting there. There's the book burning. Yeah.
Pull that a little flatter so you can just go to the end.
Let's see. Oh, this is one of my favorites. I Xeroxed this. I gave it to Gary once. I said, "This is a sign that we need to get out there and start shooting." You see a storyboard like that. It's like sort of a Rothko storyboard. There's another town meeting over J.T. Walsh. And then we never, is this the, this is the courtroom, which we ended up doing slightly differently, but some of it's similar. We ended up doing a lot more shots than we actually storyboarded. That's it.
Oh, interesting. I've been making up a new varnish, and last night I did a painting of Gene Autry based on this Dell comic book from 1955. I guess what I should do is actually be smoking a cigarette or a pipe, even though I don't do either, so that you look more intellectual. I'm very upset that I can't find, I have a special chair that belongs to me.
Hey, Frank.
Where is my nice little chair? Did someone steal it?
Which chair?
How can I say it's my nice little chair if nobody knows what it is?
This chair right here? It's little.
But there's nothing here. It's not here. I'll sit on this one. It was nicer, even though this was more comfortable. Very strange. Maybe I should have a desk. I could sit in front of my desk and make worldly pronouncements. I come out of an art collective called Los Four, and we were very active as a group in the early 70s and 80s. In a sense, in LA, just historically, there's this period in the early 70s when Chicanos who had no means to get into, say, Main Street galleries, the only way they could communicate ideas that were relevant to that culture and that society was to go to the streets and do murals. And again, which again is paralleled in this film, even though the soda guy, is totally frustrated and trying to protest against what the town elders are doing. They find the only way they can do it is by going to the streets again and doing a mural actually on the side of the jail. Again, you know, when you do a painting like this, you get involved with your own personal life. And the truth is, I don't know if this is a king snake but I actually found this snake in Arizona when I, 10 years back. And I kept it. It was just a baby, so everyone told me it's either the deadliest snake in the world or a relatively harmless one, but it was only 6 inches long. So I kept it in my pocket for 2 or 3 days. And I have photographs of it. And when we were suggesting maybe an apple to signify, cardinal knowledge, he said, well, how about a snake? And I said, well, I have a good snake. And I found those old pictures of my little pet snake. And he became part of the picture. What's missing here is the book burning in the town itself, the soda fountain, which is very pivotal to the story. I was kind of amazed to see this because as a kid, there was a giant ice cream cone it was actually in the Whittier Township in East Los Angeles, where we always went for mile-high ice cream cones. So a lot of the town of the actual town of Pleasantville, which exists as a set out in a state park in Malibu, was kind of it is nostalgic. I mean, there is that kind of thing where you sort of remember all the neat things that were part of maybe California car culture. Because the owner of the soda fountain, Mr. Johnson, grows as an artist, there were 3 artists used to do different paintings during the sequences where he becomes an artist. And I was responsible for the mural because that was my expertise, you know, doing large paintings quickly. And again, that's all the time I had. In a sense, I would have loved to have maybe done all the painting in an ideal world. But it's kind of interesting because he starts as a very awkward painter and grows in maturity as he goes along. So in a sense, it makes sense in the story. I liked the story very much, and I understood what he was doing, and it just worked out real well. I was very careful, and it's because I've done, you know, lots of murals, hundreds of murals, and I can do them very quickly. You know, again, this movie is very curious, in a way, somewhat subversive. I mean, it's about very important ideas, and again, you know, it's this sweet little 50s thing with a lot of petticoats and ruffles and pretty cars. But the story is very serious. And so I jumped at a chance to illustrate some of the things that I read into the script. And I think Gary seemed to agree with me, so, and we got away with it.